Your first option for getting some extra disk space for SQL Server is to simply use NTFS compression. Now, you can only do this with secondary files, and they have to be read-only files, so this is definitely going to limit the circumstances in which you can use it. But if it does work for you, it's pretty easy to enable. Just pick the properties of that file, hit Advanced, and select Compress Contents to save disk space. Now, this is going to kind of incur a little bit of a performance hit. You see, SQL Server is going to request the data from Windows. Windows is going to read the compressed data from disk, decompress it in memory, and hand the decompressed information off to SQL Server. So you certainly want to test this before you commit to it, but if you do have databases that have historical information in them or something like that, and you can move that information to a secondary file, then that becomes an option. Of course, you get a little bit more flexibility in SQL Server itself because the Enterprise Edition supports database compression built right into the product. To do this, we're going to select Storage, Manage Compression, and we'll get into the Data Compression Wizard. Now, in this case, I'm just going to start by selecting row-level compression, which is the lesser of the two compression techniques. But lesser doesn't always mean that it's going to be less effective. It does create less of a performance hit, and it works mainly by kind of modifying the actual data type used to store your data. Now, I'll hit Calculate here, and you can see that my current table takes up 761 megabytes, and with row-level compression, I can get it down to 11. That is a massive, massive benefit for 97,000 rows. Selecting page-level compression shows that I really wouldn't save that much more, although page-level compression does have a higher impact on your CPU. Compression is definitely not something you want to turn on a database server that's already experiencing kind of some maybe CPU-related performance issues. But if you've got a little bit of extra CPU that you can dedicate to compression, then it's a good way to save some disk space. Page-level compression does save you more space, but depending on the actual form of your data on disk, it might not save you a lot more space than the less performance-intensive row-level compression. So it can take a while to apply this type of compression. You can certainly schedule that to run later, do it during an off-hours maintenance window or something like that. Now, another thing that can take up a lot of space with SQL Server databases are, of course, those wonderful backup files. And you do have some ability to do compression right within SQL Server itself. So we'll just select the database here, tell it to run a backup, and you do have some compression options over on the Options tab. You can certainly save a lot of disk space that way, and honestly, if you've just maybe got a tape drive hooked right up to SQL Server and you back right up to that, then that's a pretty good option. I think you'll find, though, that if you hop on a search engine, punch in SQL backup compression, you'll find that the third-party independent software vendor space has a lot more ideas for improving your disk space utilization when it comes to your SQL backup, sometimes by as much as 90%, using a combination of pretty powerful compression algorithms, but also other techniques like deduplication. In fact, if you find yourself using disk-to-disk type of backups or any of another number of sort of more modern style of backup for your SQL Server, you can really save a ton of space.